We reached our very last session, last but not least. So we have a second keynote speaker. At this point, everybody's kind of tired, but I promise it will be very exciting. So very interesting session. And we have a guest, Marlene Engelhorn, for today, a keynote speech. Marlene is the co-founder of the Tax Me Now initiative, an initiative of young, wealthy individuals advocating for tax justice in German-speaking countries. The other thing that a lot of people know about her is that with her team, she established what is called the Gute Rat, that I just learned a minute ago, that it not just means the good counsel, but it also means good advice. So the Gute Rat was formed by 50 people, representative of the Austrian population, and their task was to redistribute Marlene's 25 million euros inheritance. And it was a method of citizen assembly, and their job was to allocate the funds following a deliberative process. So this process is kind of done, and Marlene, you tell us how done it is or where we are with this. Marlene has also written a book in 2022 called Geld, which explores the relationship between wealth and power, and asserts the fair redistribution can only work democratically. And she is currently, I don't know if this is accurate, I think it is, that you are currently touring Germany, Austria, and Switzerland with a theater piece, which is called Geld ist Klasse, Money is Class, which is about wealth, power, and tax. And Marlene is one of the actors in this piece. Marlene is a visionary, but not just a visionary, but also a doer. And I think her talk will follow very nicely to the panel we had just before on philanthropy. So let's welcome Marlene and enjoy the talk together.
Hi, thank you. I'm really nervous, so I'm gonna have to take a little time to blabber myself into warmth and comfort. So just bear with me as I correct the introductions. Tax Me Now also has old people, not just young people. We have people from all different kinds of ages. What we all share is that we all believe that tax justice is super important, that we are all wealthy, and that we know for a fact we can and want to pay tax on our wealth, our inheritance, our business, whatever it is that we have. We have different kinds of wealth in Tax Me Now. So that's the one thing. And the other one, the Citizens Assembly, Guter Rat, it is done in terms of the assembly sessions were from mid-March 2024 until beginning of June 2024. So the assembly doesn't come together anymore unless they do so of their own choosing privately if they feel like it. Fair enough. The only thing that is not done yet is the actual redistribution of the money, because they decided that whoever was the organizations that they picked 77 organizations, the organizations could choose the modality of the wealth distribution, which meant they could say, I want all of that money at once, or they could say, I want it, but in year X, or they could say, I want it, but in different tranches over 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. So some of the distribution is going to go well into 2029, which means that effectively it ends in 2029, I guess. But that's that. And there was one more thing. What was it? I'm stealing your time now to ponder. I forgot it. Well, maybe it'll come to mind again. So that's that. And if you have a question about this, everything about this assembly is online. Guterrat.info. That's GUTERRAT.info. And if you want any kind of information, report, evaluations, all in there. The budget is in there, everything. You can download it. Some of it you might have to run through Google Translate, because I think at best some of it is in English. Sorry. But let's start with my notes. Last time I was at CEU, I put stuff on note pieces of paper that I could carry much more easily. And this time I was trying to be fancy, and now I'm paying the price. for it. Wait a minute. Okay, I need to walk a little bit. I'm nervous. Thank you for listening to me. Okay, so please come in. It's ample time. I haven't really started yet. I've just made sure people know that I'm a nervous person. The talk is called, at least the title I was given is Inside the, please, come in, take a seat, take your time. All good, please, be my guest. Come in, take your time, get comfortable. The title is called Inside the Bubble, How the Hyper-Rich View the World. So, first of all, I can't claim that I can speak for every rich person. If I did that, there would not be a discussion on tax justice, but we would have it. Because if every rich person agreed with me, they would not lobby against tax justice. So, just so you know, there might be people who are super wealthy who disagree with how I picture them and how I paint them. But unless they are public about it, they can just be angry in their closet, which is fine by me. Or like in their palace, maybe, I don't know. So this is the one thing. And the second thing is I'm not a researcher. I have no academic degree whatsoever. I did go to university. I do know my way around researching a bit, but I will not pretend that I can give you any idea of how to do proper research, how to collect data, and how to do academic work. That's not my job. That's you who could tell me, not the other way around. Just to make very crystal clear what I can bring to this table and what I cannot bring to this table. So, to those of you who might not know who I am, because I don't always want to assume that everybody knows, I am a multi-millionaire coming from a billionaire family. I inherited my wealth. I inherited net wealth in cash, which is a kind of wealth that is very easily redistributable. It's not the same with other forms of wealth. Most of them you can sell, so really there is no excuse. But it's much easier with cash to also give it away again. This is important because, and that's why I need to turn my flipping page. Sorry. Where did I put this? Yes. Because one of the questions I get asked a lot, so I'm just going to talk about it right now for a little bit, is why would you give away millions when you inherit them? Why? And this question, when I get it, tells me a lot about the person who asks the question. Because only people who are not wealthy ask this kind of question. I see someone nod, I really like that, thank you. And the thing is, when I was announced that I got this inheritance, multi-millions, and I'm not being super transparent about it, even though I love transparency, because my family asked me not to disclose anything that would give anybody possibility of deducing the wealth of other members of the family, which is why I do this weird eggshell dance with you now, and you're very, very invited to critique me for it, because you're right to do so. But the thing is, I decided, when I heard this, I knew I should be grateful and demure and be like, oh, thank you. And I was furious. I was angry. And I was angry because I knew it wasn't justice. Nobody should be born and then just get money for it. That is a reflection of a feudal system that stands in stark contradiction of democracy. So I should never have gotten this wealth to begin with. It shouldn't have been mine. And I knew it so much that I was like, God damn it. Now all of my wonderful values about social justice that I read about and that I think so highly of, they are worth nothing unless I put all of this into action. And so I was like, okay, I not only am I disgusted with the injustice, but also I have to own it. It's not a question of, oh, is it your fault or not to be born so uber rich? Yeah, no, who cares? But like I will always be, even if I redistribute everything, which is my goal, I will always be part of the top 1%, even just by family association, even just through friends, through networks that I have, through all of the privilege that has formed me and that allows me, for instance, to enter every building like I own it, which gives a kind of confidence, that so many people work their lifetime to achieve. And so I'm very aware of that. And so I need you to understand, as transparent as I try to be, and as reflective, self-reflected as I try to be of my privilege, I remain privileged. And I can do all of these efforts and that will not go away. Just always bear that in mind. I'm not a good rich person, I'm just a rich person. That's what I'm trying to say. So, turning my page again. We're gonna do this a little bit today. Sorry. Okay, so, inside the bubble, how the super rich view the world. First of all, I want to tell you, the cliches are true. I don't know what cliche you know about uber rich people, whatever cliche you hold in your heart and your mind and your gut about how the wealthy really think or not. Most of them are true. That's my personal experience. And I think the most important ones to understand that are true is, first of all, we can literally afford not to care. We can buy our asses out of every kind of crisis. We can make everything that happens in this world not affect us, not touch us. And this is crucial to understand because there's a social pattern underneath this, which is a pattern of, I don't know if I put this properly in English. In German, I would say Entsolidarisierung. In English, I would say dissociating or desolidarizing, which is a very Germanistic kind of way of trying to say the same word. But it's a disconnect to the society that the 1% or the 0.1% perform in order to cut their empathy with the rest, which makes it easier to then extract from the lives and the labor and the land of other people and land that they have never even set foot on. I forget to breathe out and I try not to do it into the microphone, so when I do this, just lose some air. This is really important to understand because our comfort level is always, and when I say we and our, I mean the top 1%. I always imply the top 1% of wealth distribution. Because in income distribution, managerial class, those are our employees. We are owning and ruling class. We employ managerial class. Sometimes we take managerial class as jobs. Tough. When we are the CEO of our own company, for instance, instead of letting somebody who studied for it do that kind of job, who might actually be qualified, but they're not inheritors, so who cares? So basically our comfort zone will always be at the center of what we try to protect. And this has a direct effect on you because we will burn the planet to protect our comfort zone. We will literally look sideways while people die in the very supply chains of our businesses that we're proud of. And you must understand this. I want to try to burst the bubble because so many people I meet, even the most reflected people, tend to have this awe around wealthy people, that they have so much power, and if they are even the remotest bit of kind and polite, they might be good people. But even through the passive control of their assets, through the power that they choose not to use, they are complicit in a system that is essentially killing life on all of this planet, including the planet, at the end of the day. This is what this boils down to. And it's very harsh, but I think if we don't face that, we can't critique properly what's going on. So the thing is, with that combination of protecting your comfort zone on the one hand, by all means, and dissociating from the quote-unquote normal society of the 99%, this makes my class extremely prone to be manipulated. Because we, in essence, we erase checks and balances of our privilege and our power to be part of our bubble. Because it hurts to be criticized, so we don't want it. All of the people who could do that are essentially on our payroll, and we can choose just to kick them out if they don't tell us what we want to hear. If you doubt me, look at the US president. He is a wonderful example of where this leads. And it makes so many of us prone to be manipulated, and be it through populism, propaganda, or fascism. Those are things that are very, very easily put into the heads of my class, because we do not represent any kind of actual person's value. We can't, because we don't make the experience. Never. The exclusivity of my class makes sure that we cannot fully understand what it means to live a normal, and by that I mean middle class, which is already unattainable for so many people in working class and poor class, and poor classes, right? Like, even that is completely unimaginable to almost all of us. Privilege and power change those who hold them, whether we want it or not. And that goes for me as well. The fact that I still speak publicly could be criticized. Who am I to still open my blabbermouth after redistributing my wealth? You tell me, and we have a Q&A afterwards. I'm curious. But I think it's important to understand wealth is essentially power, and it's essentially power that is unchecked. And also the dynamics, the relationship dynamics that unfold in this bubble that is so exclusive, I personally would describe them as cult-like. I have heard someone else say it's like an addiction. You're born into an addicted community. All of them are addicts. Your financial advisor is, in essence, your dealer, but he's also an addict because of the amounts of money you pay him. And like, it's really hard to get out of that without sober friends. Try and find sober friends when you have the behaviors of an addict, which is usually socially very problematic behavior, very difficult behavior. I would go further. I would say it's cult-like. You can't ever criticize wealth. You can't criticize money immediately. Everybody's like, how dare you? And you risk losing all of your ties, all of your connection, when you dare say that excessive wealth hoarding is essentially bad. You just judge it. That alone, like, you don't even have time to have your analysis unfold. If you lead by, there is a problem here, bam, you're kicked out quicker than you can think. Especially when you tie theory to action. So many wealthy people who have read Marx back to front to end and know it perfectly and would never lift a finger to put that theory into action because they also believe inequality is natural. We can't actually do anything about it. And all of you have heard Katharina Pista talk, so you know that's not true. So why do I tell you all of this? I really need you to lose the sense of awe and to get, and I basically want to offer you my analysis of my class, and maybe you will carry this forward into actual research, like Rachel Sherman did in Uneasy Street, for those who like to have an idea of how to start this kind of stuff. That's a really good book to read, by the way. Don't read it at night, it makes you angry. But maybe just me. So, what do people who have secluded themselves so cult-like into like their bubble, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but you know, what do they tell themselves in order to justify this kind of thinking, this kind of living, this kind of behavior? Well, in essence, we tell ourselves that we earned it. We must have, right? And that is something I have a huge problem with. And I have more notes on this, so I think I have to stand here for a minute to make sure I don't forget any of my very, very clever ideas. Exactly, so claiming to earn your wealth is factually so inaccurate, I find it baffling that it even holds, because there is no way that one person or family can actually earn all of their wealth. Even if you just divide their wealth by like an hourly wage, you get insane numbers. That it just doesn't happen. Or like comparisons, if you take Dieter Schwarz, the richest German, allegedly the richest German, we don't know that actually the Böhringer family is richer than the Schwarz family, but you can't say it in public because then they go legally against you and stuff like that. Anyway, so he owns like, what, 44 billion, that's the estimation. If you do that, the math, and you earn 50,000 a year, which is an average German salary, you have to work 1 million years. And that alone gives you an idea that there is no way you can earn this kind of money. And there is a fundamental confusion that is in there, because it confuses ownership, which is a right, you have a right to own property, with work. And like the owner of a company doesn't have to be the CEO of the company. They can be, but they can also delegate that to the managerial class. But this distinction is not properly made in media, at least not as far as I know. There's a huge confusion of that, and it's problematic not only because it's legally inaccurate, but also because it creates a false narrative of there actually being a possibility of earning billions, which is not possible. Nobody will ever in their lifetime earn billions. It's not possible. You can own them, you can accumulate them, you can extract them through using the ways that wealth flows, which is legally conducted and created and also lobbied for by my class. But you can't, through work, earn it. It's not to be done. And whoever wants to then tell me something about a boxer or an NBA star, come on. No, that's just luck. So the problem I take with earn as well is that it implies something that is very revelatory of the political idea behind it, which is status. When you earn, that means you deserve. That also means that someone else who didn't earn billions or might be poor deserves that. And that means you divide in at least two categories, the winners and the losers, the high status and the low status, maybe more of them, maybe there's more nuance. But at least that. And you justify being better, and you cannot do that without justifying that or pretending that others must be worse in terms of worth less, literally worth less. Don't believe me? Look up the definition of HNWI. It's high net worth individual. I would like to say high net wealth individual. I think that's factually more correct, but it says high net worth individual. I think this is, I don't like it. I really don't like it. So to imply two different categories of people, one who deserves to be well off or rich, one who deserves to be poor, those are two sides of the same coin. But this difference is also made after assessing someone's financial situation. You don't say, you deserve, and then you give them the billions. You look at the billions, and then you deduct worth from that. You're like, because this person has billions, they must be worth them. Which also is just absurd logic to me. Right? It's the same logic that any discrimination is based on. You are white, you must be better. You are male or male presenting, you must be more proficient. You are able-bodied, you must be better at, I don't know, playing a sport or something. All of this is not necessarily true, right? So this is telling, because if you think that some people are worth more and some are worth less, politically what this means is that you are more prone to believe in a feudal structure or a fascist structure than a democratic one. Because democracy in essence believes everybody is worth the same. But it also understands, that's my understanding of democracy, that in order for everybody to be worth the same, you need a legal framework that works with the differences that we are born into. Like some are taller or shorter or bigger or thinner or white or black or brown, and able-bodied, not able-bodied, we are born very different. And in order to create equality and equal opportunity, you need a legal framework that works with that difference and recognizes this diversity as not only to be cherished, but to be channeled into something that creates opportunities for everybody. And you can't have that without a democratic framework, I would say. A feudal framework doesn't do that. They're like, those are worth more because they're genetically superior, because this dynasty is better than every other dynasty. We know what happens when you consider genetic superiority. Germany and Austria have a difficult history with that, to say the least. But I just think it's so telling what this serves for rich people. Why do they need this narrative? And I don't think a lot of this is conscious. I think some of this is very, very unconscious, and it's my analysis, and therefore it reflects me as well. So please, researchers that you are, figure out where I'm flawed and publish it. But this narrative of like earning and not and everything, that goes into meritocratic narratives, which are utter rubbish. Nobody deserves to be better off than anybody else. Anyway, it claims objectivity, right, to a certain degree. It's like, yeah, we can see those figures tell us these people are hardworking because they are billionaires, and these people are lazy because they are nurses. Or have you met a billionaire nurse before? I haven't. But I know them to be one of the hardest working people you could possibly come across. And it creates an echo chamber, and this echo chamber serves a purpose. It serves a purpose for rich people to feel relieved of guilt, of shame, and of responsibility that would come from acknowledging the injustice of status, the injustice of difference, and also the inherently feudalistic and therefore anti-democratic nature of this narrative. And so, inside the bubble, how the hyper-rich view the world, they shape it according to these views, so many of them unconscious, that it's difficult to critique them from the inside, which is one of the reasons why so many societies drift to the far right. We have claimed power over so much, over the economic sphere through monopoly, or like, what is it called when there's many monopolistic structures at the same time, but not yet, like oligarchic kind of, or, you know, there's a term I'm lacking, you will know it later on. There's an actual, anyway, like the economic sphere, also media, look at who owns the media. I'm not saying it's a top-down chain where just because you own it, you can go to journalists and say, you have to print what I say. That's not how this works. It's much more subtle. It's like who you choose to be on the board of directors and who you choose to be designing what the newspaper should work like or what it should be. What is the, in German you say Blattlinie, which is basically the opinion line that they have, that they hold, and according to which they analyze politics, economics, even literature. And then it's like this is a trickle-down effect of bias, because bias begets bias. Bias makes sure that you choose people in decision-making power that are like you, which is why DEI is so important to counter that effect. Anyway, but like you see that this narrative that is created of betterness, of being worth more, these feudalistic tendencies, they are very deeply embedded in a class that has actually managed to dissociate so vastly from 99% of the people, and it serves another purpose, and that is to claim independence when, frankly, my class is the most dependent class possible, because we need all of your lives and all of your labor and all of your living. Otherwise, we don't have any wealth. How do the billions work? Like I own your, like if I was the 1% and you were the 99, I own your houses in which you pay rent. I own your jobs in which, yes, you get a wage, but the surplus worth that is created through your work and labor and what we call profit goes to my pocket exclusively. That's a choice. That's not nature. It's a choice of distribution. Distribution of profit goes to the owners. I don't have to work. You work for me. And I collect all the time, I accumulate, I hoard, because the flux of wealth is income flows to property. And the potential of property when it's positive is wealth, when it's negative is debt. There you go. So I think that's important because it dismantles all of these ideas of self-made, which is already such a patriarchal idea. Somebody who thinks self-made is possible must be a man because they have not understood that there's such a thing as care. Like, do you make all of your meals yourself, or are you able to work without food? And I mean literally every single meal, including the supply chain order, because you're not even farming your own goddamn potatoes. You don't, do you, as a CEO? Most likely not. And even so, maybe the potatoes, but what with the rest of the crops that you need in order to feed yourself? It's impossible. You can't be self-made. We're part of an intricate, complex societal structure that spans nationally and worldwide in wild fields of interaction that are so difficult to understand profoundly and properly that you can't break it down to any kind of self-made. There is not such a thing. And even if you say, yeah, but we all are, and therefore it doesn't count, well, in the minute in which you employ a person in your enterprise, you're not self-made anymore, because obviously you can't do all of the work yourself. And then the question that remains is, do you share your profit or not? Do you pay a fair wage or not? Those are all decisions. There's no such thing. But self-made is important because self-made enables you to pretend that you are born to rule over those who need to follow you. So this is a form of supremacy. Sorry, I was ill. And the more supremacy you have, the more privilege you have, the more narrow your view of the world gets. Like, it really restricts your experience of the world. And unless you can have experiences from other people, other groups, through genuine listening and interaction, you will not be able to take any meaningful decision on behalf of anybody who is not like you. And the less privilege you have, the more variety of intersection you witness and experience, the more nuanced your decision-making is actually. That's my personal experience. But what it boils down to, when you are in the supremacist position, the privileged position, what we all have in common, me as a super wealthy white person, and all men, cis men that is, all other white people, of course, all other wealthy people, is we have incredibly fragile egos. Incredibly, incredibly fragile egos. Not only is there male fragility and white fragility, there's also rich fragility. Don't tell a rich person they're rich, they will just fall to pieces. They can't, they're like, no, I earned it. Did you though? And what happens in a relationship between a fragile ego and someone else, you can enter areas of abuse very, very quickly. And so one of the reasons I want to talk to you about all of these things which go into the emotional is because I think the most important thing that wealthy people need is an identity crisis. And the most important thing that you need is to get out of learned helplessness, which is something that, not you necessarily, but the 99%, so many people are used to being oppressed. Even if it's not radically, blatantly brutal, violent oppression, can be, but can also be very subtle. Oxfam calls it economic violence, which is when somebody who is in economic power uses that power to get what they want without having to invite you to the decision-making table and essentially affecting your life without you being able to take any part in it. But like these abuse structures that we have in private relationships, in a way, you can use that to explain power dynamics on a broader societal level. And so the fragility that we have as rich people needs to be addressed. And we need an identity crisis. Usually that comes from trauma. Now, I don't wish trauma on anybody, not even the rich. Although I think maybe taxation is traumatic enough for some of us. So that's why I'm advocating for this. Or justice. They're like, oh, justice. Somebody's going to take my rights away. Honey, you haven't understood justice, but okay. Fair enough. Who gave you a microphone? And what all of these fragile egos have in common as well is we all want the relationship. We deeply want it, we crave it, most of the time because we're very dependent. But we don't want to do the work, we just want the result, which is also very, very telling. When you see someone wanting a relationship and not being able to do the relationship work, be it mental load or be it just the regular acts of kindness and care that you need in order for a relationship to grow and to become something actually meaningful. And in terms of like bigger societal relationship, that means pay your damn taxes. That's a way of caring for society. It's a way of admitting that you trust a process of democratic value more than your own personal preferences and favorites. That you care enough to be like, I'm going to give this part of my money, whatever it is, because I want it to become universal healthcare or public transport or whatever the hell. And also I'm acting in terms of my rights of voting to make sure that the people I give my voice to can represent my preferences and wishes, but I don't go around the system. So yeah, we want the result and not a process. We need an identity crisis. And what's my last little thought that I scribbled in the margin? Oh yeah, we will not save you. We will not save you. None of you. We don't care. Some of us might. Some of us might think we care. Some of us might be sure we care. But action beats word. And unless very, very wealthy people do everything in their possibility to share their power, make transparent what privilege they hold, and try to give it back to where it came from, which is society. If that's the bare minimum, if you don't do the bare minimum, you don't really care. you just like to be called super rich because it's like superpower. I have seen adult rich people in like intimate circles break down in tears when you ask them what's left of them when you strip them of their wealth. And they don't know. So I need you, in case you were still in awe of rich people one way or another, including me, because I know some people think that I'm a good rich person. I'm not, I'm just a rich person. I might fall on my head tomorrow and have the craziest ideas and thank God I don't have the wealth anymore to follow them. But seriously, we're not going to help you. At best, we are allies, which means we follow your lead in whatever kind of social movement you're involved, be it feminism, anti-racism, anti-ableism, social justice movements, you name them. Unless we support these movements, unless we start listening to your leadership, we're not really there to care, we're not really there to help. And that's what I kind of want to leave you with. That it's frankly up to you, because we use the diversity that you have against you currently, you know, divide et impera, divide and conquer. Make sure that you have infights so that you don't fight me. Just look at this, like the 99% and the 1%. If the 99% are united against the 1%, what are we going to do? We can't do anything. We can do like, okay, yes, whatever you want. We might be a minority in terms of how many of the population we are, but we're not an actual minority in terms of what a democracy needs to protect. Democracy needs to protect you from us more than the other way around. And what we don't understand, because we have so much privilege and we're so blinded by this privilege, is the more the progressive discourse figures out the intersectionality of all these different movements and widens their view to how all of these things play into each other, the better organized you are. And I think the movements are further along the way than they understand. I think my class completely underestimates this power of the progressive movements that do the intersectional work. And I truly believe that society-wise, we already stand on the shoulders of everybody who was there before us, who fought for things they didn't even see come to fruition. They might have not witnessed democracy. They might have not witnessed any kind of justice, any kind of win, and they still did all of the work. And we're standing on these shoulders. That's where I want to be in solidarity with you all, because the more we are, the better we can change this. And it's worth every effort. But you do not need us. So yeah, questions?
Thank you for sharing. I think we all appreciate, and probably lots of questions. So I just pass it on to. Yeah. Can I collect a few?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah. One here. In the back afterwards.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed your talk. And I have a question about something you said in the first part, where you were talking about how the rich, super rich, think about politics perhaps as a thing they own. At least that's what I kind of heard. And I thought, it's interesting what you think about the following. To what extent that is something that can only be the case in democracy? Because I'm from Russia, right? And when I think about Russia, there are a lot of very rich people there, and they don't owe Vladimir Putin, right? It's the other way around. And I think they know that. And I think the same is probably true in China. It's the Communist Party who owns the rich, not the other way around. Although, of course, Vladimir Putin, for example, himself is an extremely rich person. So to what extent this feeling of this very special power and the feeling that there is no one above you, do you think it's something specific to, well, liberal democracies? Yeah, that's my question.
Hi, Benjamin Sovacool from Boston University and Sussex University. First, let me just say thank you for leading by example. You're the only multimillionaire I've ever met or heard speak that has given up 90% of their wealth, so well done. I wish more people would follow that. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts. There's a clothing company called Patagonia, which makes quite nice jackets and things like that, and boots and hiking gear. And about 3 years ago, their board, including their founder, gave the company back to the earth, so that now every profit they make goes to nature conservation, I think in Chile. And I always thought, what a really radical, bold vision. And the founder had hoped more companies would follow, none have. But is at least that a good sign of harnessing the power of capital to actually do nature conservation, or no?
Okay. First, a little correction. I gave away close to 100%, and I'm proud of that, and I want this to be, to be known. Minus what I used in order to pay for all expenses, living costs, rent, travel, all that sort of stuff. The first question, only possible in democracy. First of all, I think a democracy is always to be favored over any kind of oppressive, dictatorial, or authoritarian regime of any kind, pure and simply because it's not just about the question who owns the wealthy or not. The second is all of the countries worldwide, as far as I understand it, but please correct me, have to operate under capitalism, is hegemonial. There is not a way of being in international trade without following capitalistic set of rules and laws, which means that at the end of the day, the owning classes of the world still own the decisions that Russia and China have to abide by in order to participate in that. So I think it's less that it's happening in democracy, it's happening in capitalism that owning becomes ruling. Because capitalist is structured in such a way that through the legal framework that we have, and thankfully Catherine Opista is here to correct me, I'll just look, and if she does this, I'm like, okay, somebody give her a microphone. But unless, the legal framework that we have in capitalism that sets up capitalism makes for a certain class of people, gives them the ability to exert an enormous amount of power without needing a mandate for it, which goes against democratic values, which is why there is such a conflict between capitalism and democracy, and there is such a tricky way of uniting them. I stand on the position that we need something else, that we need to emancipate ourselves from this system and build something different. What it is, I don't know, I can't tell you because I'm not an expert and I don't envision the new super economic, social, political system, but I think we know well enough what's not working, what we need to fix, and when we have fixed all of that we need to fix, I think it needs a new name. But so I think it's an expression of capitalist system working, and none of the countries can buy their way out of that. That's my understanding. So that's one. And the other question was about Patagonia. So I got confronted with this model a lot when it came up. So I don't have all of it perfectly in my head anymore. I have to Google in my brain, which is never a good thing. But I think there's a very, very far-right extremist billionaire, Said, I think is his name, last name, S-A-I-D or S-A-I-D, one of the two, I don't know the spelling. And he did essentially the same that the Patagonia guy did, only to funnel the profit into right-wing extremism, especially also the abolition of the abortion laws. So you tell me if that's a good model to follow. I think at the end of the day, also it was a tax evasion model for the family. This was not charity. This was a way of making sure that the preference of the philanthropist in this case would be enshrined into something, a structure that has a potential of eternity, if you will, unless the legal framework is changed in such a way that this structure doesn't abide by law anymore, it has then to be restructured or something. So basically, I think the end doesn't justify the means. Even if you go for environmental protection, which, yeah, tipping my top hat to you, wonderful. If you use a structure that inherently is also, that you can also use for quote-unquote bad things, that questions the process you chose. And I think I would always want to use processes that when I use them, I also am okay with it when somebody I disagree with uses them, because the process in and of itself is a good process. That would be my approach. So I reject the Patagonia model. I know he meant well, but also who's in charge of that foundation? That's his kids, right? Yeah, power and stuff, dynastics. Tricky, tricky, tricky.
More questions? Yes.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is very practical. As someone who has funded research, who was trying to tap into the wealthy and understand how they see taxes. It's very hard. Most of them don't really want to talk to a researcher. So if you have any suggestion on how that might work out, I'll be very glad to hear it. The second one is a very personal one. What do you think about expropriation? If taxes doesn't work and tomorrow democratically we decide that whatever's above $1 million, sorry, we're taking it. Do you think that would work? Do you think would be ethically and morally justifiable? Yeah, any take you have on that, I'd be curious too. Thank you.
Thanks for that fascinating insider insights. I have a very academic question I'm wanting to ask you, also particularly because you possibly are one of the people that could verify the hunch that I have. And the hunch I'm having is that what you presented in terms of the inside view makes you associate wealth with power and self-interest of the wealthy. But my hunch from reading some of the literature on also the views of the wealthy of themselves often portrays them as having this notion that the wealth really isn't their own in the sense that they individually as a person own it, but they only, they are in charge of it as trustees, but there's this notion of trusteeship, it's family wealth, they have to keep it, they have to, make it grow. So to what extent is there among your circles the notion that this isn't really ours, it's just for us there to pass along, and we have to treat it accordingly so we can pass it along in a good fashion? And to what sense is there also some notion of, and that might strike the political economists as a ridiculous idea, but some notion of a symbolic meaning of all that wealth?
No. Sorry, I have forgotten tissue, so you have to listen to me sniffle. The first one, research about wealthy, and that's tricky, what to do. Well, talk to me. I talked to every researcher I found, who found me basically. Oh, thank you so much. I will use that when the next question is asked. I talked to them. I tried to make time for any kind of research conversation. I tried to share that within the circle of contacts that I have. But at the same time, I think what you need to do is you have to advocate for tax justice, because the funny thing is, even with a 0% wealth tax, you collect data about who owns the wealth, and then it's not a piece of cake, but it becomes easier. So that would be my number one advice. Advocate, join me in tax justice fights, but also feel free to reach out, and then if I can help you, I will, and if I can connect you to people who might be able, then I'll do that. The next thing about expropriation, I think publicly we might not be at the stage yet to discuss this well, but I think it must be done because it's just a legal tool. We use it all the time. Every time, for instance, when we have public infrastructure, we expropriate people who happen to live where we need to have train tracks, right? So we expropriate them, which means it's just, and it's not what people think is it's theft or robbery. No, it's a forced selling of your property. And then you can argue whether this is really the value that it has, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, it's just a legal tool. It's a tool that we have and that we should use when we need it. Especially also when we face structures, I think, that are too big to fail. We're splitting them up, and also expropriation can be tools. And I think the best example that I would encourage you to follow is happening in Berlin. I don't know if you're aware of it. There's a movement, it's called DWE, Deutsche Wohnen und Co. enteignen. It means Deutsche Wohnen and Vonovia and whatever they're all called. They're big companies that own enormous amounts of flats, of buildings where people live. And their business model is essentially that they own these buildings and these flats, they drive up the rent, and they put absolutely no money in the maintenance of the buildings, which creates the profit that they need in order to give a lot of dividends and revenue to the shareholders. And so there is a movement of people in Berlin that uses the Berlin Constitution that allows two ways of changing legislation in Berlin. The first is by initiating a referendum. So they had a referendum, should we expropriate these big companies, housing owners? And the vote went, I think, 56% in favor. And then the CDU, which is the Conservative Party, that also won like a major share of the vote in the next vote. They entered the Senate, I hope I do this properly, and basically they blocked that. Also, the SPD candidate was not really much in favor of it, like, let's be frank. But so it's being blocked even though it won and by the constitution should come into effect, which means that they should discuss it, they should figure out a way of putting this into effect. But the constitution gives you a second option, and currently DW is following that second option, which is if you write the law of expropriation, and if you put that law to vote, and if it's voted for, it becomes effective law. Then it will be the first expropriation law that has ever been properly put into place in the history of Germany since World War II. That would be incredibly exciting to see, because it would prove that there are democratic political means of changing crises such as the housing crisis. And I don't know if you're familiar with the housing market in Berlin, but it is insane what's going on there. And it's partly due to the fact that it's so highly privatized. So I think it's an important tool. And I think, as with every powerful tool, you have to make sure to use it properly and wisely. But also, you can't just let it rot in your toolbox when you have it. I don't see why you would. But yeah, there's a lot of propaganda around it. It's like theft and that it's dictatorial. No, that's not true. But yeah, anyway. So I think it would work, and I think it's morally definitely justifiable, but I don't think that the moral question is even important. It's a democratic question. And the second question was, the wealthy say that they're in charge of maintenance, it's a prestige thing, they must protect and grow, it's not really ours, it's for our children and the children of our children, blah, blah, blah. That's dynastic talk. I don't care the symbolic value that they attach to your wealth. I could not give less of a flying fuck. Literally. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You can embellish any action with what your view of it is. You can embellish abuse if you want to. It remains abuse. And legally speaking, you might consider yourself a steward, but you are an owner. You're not a steward. Legally speaking, you own this. When you own it, you can't say you don't own it. I mean, you can, but it's just not true. It's just not true. And why would one family or one dynasty be deserving of the accumulation and concentration of wealth, which always must come from somebody else lacking all of this wealth? These are linked. You cannot abolish poverty without, which is one excess, without abolishing the other excess, which is extreme wealth concentration. They are two sides of the same coin. And every time that you have a family that accumulates wealth, I don't know if you're familiar with the book Our Lives in Their Portfolios, but that's essentially it. We own your flats. We can only accumulate by buying more of your houses. Now the boomers that are entering rent and realize, okay, the housing prices are insane and my care situation is also insane, so I'm going to sell my house now because it's a sweet spot. I'm going to rent a little flat or might get myself into a good caring facility and be able to to pay for that. Who is on the market and can compete with these prices? Young families? No fucking way. It's my class. So we suck wealth out of your middle classes, out of governments as well. There's billionaires who are worth more than countries. That's insane. So I don't care what wonderful flowery viewpoint you have, not you, but wealthy people. Oh, we're just protecting it. And it's just, we have to make sure that we maintain this long-standing tradition. Yeah, slavery was a long-standing tradition. Should we have maintained it? No. Period. I don't care. I don't care for your symbolic attachment to your wealth because it is tied to the crises that so many people suffer from. You must redistribute. That's my take. Next.
Yeah, many thanks, Marlene. I've three questions. I try to be brief. The first one is related to what you described as the identity and the necessary identity crisis of the rich. You talked about the kind of the self-denial or the denial of being wealthy. And you cited that book with interviews about people with high income in New York, where they found that phenomenon. I would like you to elaborate on that. I would like to hear more on that. A second thing on taxation. I very much sympathize with your tax me now. I think that's the way. But it is also very much context dependent. It's super plausible in Germany, in Austria, where we have democratic, capable states. But what if you, kind of as a thought experiment, if you would have been born into Mexico, let's say, I spent many years in Mexico, there you have something resembling a democracy, but it's a very incapable state. People perceive it as corrupt. It's incapable of doing very basic things. Would you also kind of think that kind of requesting the Mexican state to tax you would have been a good idea? Or would there be other solutions you would have in mind? And finally, a personal question. Kind of part of our cliches of the rich, kind of a structural cliche, is that they can't trust any relationships because every friendship is kind of suspicious of being motivated by self-interest. So now that you have given away all your riches, do you feel liberated? Can you trust your friends again?
That's enough.
Yeah, that's sorry. First, I was blowing my nose. I hope I heard your first question properly. Was about people who deny their wealthiness, right? That's a phenomenon that is actually well researched. That no matter where you land on the spectrum of ownership of wealth, like of whether you do own some or a lot or none, everybody counts themselves as the middle class. Everybody thinks that, like, middle class, maybe top 10%-ish, but like we're not wealthy. Because the richer you get, the more you compare upwards. Like there's a tendency, there's also exceptions, but a lot of them are like, yeah, but there's always someone who's richer than you. But yeah, that's true for everybody other than the richest person. Like that's a ridiculous way of trying to figure out where you land. And so many people, when you show them where they actually land in wealth distribution, are extremely surprised. I think a rule that applies for most people is you are closer to a homeless person with 3 bad months without salary than you are to a billionaire with 3 good salary months, which helps a lot of people to maybe like recalibrate where they stand in that hierarchy, if you want to call it that. Probably you should call it that. But yeah, so many people understand that it's not just to own so much more. They understand, especially in the German-speaking context, there is this idea of you shouldn't flaunt your wealth, you shouldn't show it off, right? You should pretend to be humble and modest, which is not humility, and it's not modesty, or maybe it's modesty, because modesty can be a form of vanity. I'm quoting Maya Angelou here, but very badly, so figure out what Maya Angelou said, because she said it so beautifully. But anyway, there is no humility in that statement. Look at the Quants. There's a very, very good documentary. It's called The Silence of the Quants. The Quants are the family that own BMW, not only BMW, but that's what they're mainly known for. And I mean, this family had their own personal concentration camps during the Nazi regime for their like factories. They never apologized for it. And in this documentary, a reporter tries to get the matriarch, like I don't know what her first name is, but Madame Quandt, whatever, the mum of Stefan Quandt and Susanne Klatten, and she rebuffs him by saying like, we are living like normal people, we don't flaunt our wealth, what do you want? Which is a weird way of reacting to a very critical question regarding the history of the wealth, to be like, but we are modest, which then they enter like a limousine to drive to like a very exclusive conference. I'm like, modest, really? I don't know. But yeah, it's very common. I don't know what else to tell you other than it's this weird absurd, but maybe that. You can always, I said rich fragility because I wanted you to connect it to male fragility and white fragility. White people are like, yeah, but I'm not privileged. I'm not getting everything I want just because I'm white. I hear that a lot. That's a super racist thing to say, because it is blind for the fact that the structures are so that your whiteness would never cause you to like find a hurdle on your path. Maybe something else will create a hurdle for you. Your working class background, for instance, might, but your whiteness won't. And yet there's this blindness to it, and you have that with wealth as well. The rich fragility is also like, yeah, but I'm not that wealthy. I can't buy the moon. Come on. But I mean, look at the protesters in Venice. They did a huge thing. I don't know if you saw it. Put up this huge poster on the Marcus Place or whatever it's called in Venice, talking to basically Jeff Bezos, being like, if you can buy Venice for your wedding, you can pay taxes. Beautiful. What an image. But your two other questions. First of all, tax justice depends on the context. What if you're in like Mexico or other non-democratic or corrupt state? First of all, I wouldn't be so sure that our structures are that perfect and are that non-corrupt. Like maybe not in the classical sense of, oh, there's money bags that are changing hands, but there's a level of corruption in the kind of lobbyism that we find that I think is very, very dangerous, especially in Germany. Thanks to lobby control, we know more than we should know because it's very intransparent. But we see, like for instance, with the German tax law for inheritance tax. They have an inheritance tax, and in Austria we don't have one, so we have to envy the German people until we read their tax system and we're like, oh my fucking God, what are you doing? The lobby organization Stiftung Familienunternehmen, which is a foundation to represent the interests of family dynastically owned mega companies, they in 2016 co-wrote the exceptions that are in this law, and they bragged about it on record. They were like, that was a special hour of policy counseling, Sternstunde der Politikberatung. They were proud of it. And that is, I don't know if legally you could call that corruption, but it goes so close because it really makes sure that there is one interest that is favored over everybody else's interest. That's number one. The second is, just because a country is not in the global north doesn't mean it's not automatic, or doesn't mean that it's automatically a bad system. Which, just wanted it to be said. I know you didn't mean that, but still, I need it to be said because I encounter this a lot. The examples we pick are never from the global north when we say non-democratic. They're always from the global south, which, tricky. But yeah, of course, if you have a difficult system, then you can have a different tax discussion. But I only ever see this criticism when it's about wealth tax. I never see it about income tax or VAT, right? If you have an inherently corrupt system, any kind of taxation should be in question and not just wealth taxation, if you want to put tax to the question. But it shows that with wealthy people, we imply such a higher level of they should be able to also decide whether or not they want to pay this tax, which we don't with anybody else. We never debate, should we have VAT in Mexico? Right? You do? You debate that. I have not had this debate anywhere else. This is my surprise of the day. Thank you for having that debate. Maybe you should publish it so that people like me find it, like the lay people. But you know what I mean, though, in the general broader discussion of things, because I get this counter argument a lot. And I think at the end of the day, there's so many more tools around financial systems that we can use. And wealth taxation will always be one of them. And maybe it's not the first one to use, because first you might need to straighten up your government situation. But you will end up with a wealth taxation situation nonetheless. At the end of the day, this is what you will have to have kind of regulation of that. And so what I think I like to discuss in that situation is, how about cutting the debt of the global south? I think that would be a very, very cool discussion to have to start financial means in order to create justice and level playing fields worldwide. But let's go to the last question, because I run away with my words. Cliches about the friendships and the suspicion stuff. My personal experience is, as a wealthy person, because I started talking openly to my friends about everything when I was still non-public, but already extremely rich, just because of the family and also through the inheritance. I showed them the numbers, everything. We had every discussion openly. And my experience is that it only strengthens your relationships. Rich people think they're super subtle about being very rich and privileged, and nobody can know unless they tell them. It's the same thing with every kind of privilege. Those who are not in possession of privilege are the best to detect privilege in others. So everybody who is not extremely rich usually can tell when somebody is extremely rich. We're not subtle. Some of us, very, very few of us, but most of us are so blinded by our privilege we don't even see where we do things that are telling. And so I think we should be very, very open about money, about wealth, about power, open about the criticism, open about the problems that might come up. I've had some conflict in my friend circle where we realized all of a sudden that there is a class divide between us and there is a power divide that ensues from that class divide, and we have to navigate this conflict and realize, how can we remain in a friendship that is aware of this, that doesn't get consumed by this, where criticism that is told to me is not necessarily personal, can be because I can be an idiot about something and then I deserve the criticism, but sometimes it's structural and I'm just representative of a class. And how can I make this distinction? And that's a lot of work. But I think you just need to do relationship work. And then if you work on your relationships properly, those relationships will be wonderful. And if sometimes people part ways, fair enough. But I'd rather live in a situation where I have to figure this out and just be open and try my best and put myself openly and honestly into a relationship rather than being afraid of relationships because the only thing I care to protect for is my wealth and hiding it. If that's my priority, then I'm not a good relationship partner to begin with because I obviously choose this above anything else, any kind of openness. No, I think my experience is friendship doesn't give a shit about millions. They will laugh about you with or without them. And they will laugh with you with or without them, and they will support you with or without them. And every once in a while you can buy them dinner, why not?
Marlene, in your talk you were talking about solidarity and the people, like the 99% should organize from the ground up and not care about what the 1% really thinks because they won't help the 99%. And so also you touched upon the power of capitalism in this. And my observation is in this capitalist system, the promise of actually getting rich and this lingering thing that you can be part of this 1%, or if not be part of this 1%, you can just make your lives better by getting richer. So this is a huge impediment to solidarity and organizing with people who are more similar to you, I mean to us right now, or I don't know how to which point of view should I say this, but yeah. So, and also there is another idea which is vaguely connected to this, but I hear it all the time that, okay, you should save for retirement, save for old age, no one going to be taking care of you, and the one method of this is the stock market. So you go to the stock market, maybe buy property, and this is like a wise and responsible thing to do because you don't want to be like retired and have no money and like really be destitute when you're old. And so people are actually motivated and told to save for old age, and this is also within like this capitalist framework. And so my question to you, or like you kind of elaborated on this, but if any additional opinion or thought on this, like what can wake people up to think about, what can be the message to this, that nothing within this capitalist realms, that okay, you are sold this promise to be rich, that you can be rich within, but it's never going to happen. So many people are not practicing this solidarity because they kind of hung on to this promise of becoming more and more rich right now, and they see as realistic right now rather to like find allies within your own proximity and people who are more similar to you. So yeah, the question is, what can you add on to that? Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and for sharing your ideas. Thank you for the presentation, for sharing your ideas. I wanted to recall an episode in the early 20th century with people like Andrew Carnegie asking his millionaire friends to donate their money to establish philanthropic foundations and spend the money for the good of mankind. And then there is a more recent example with people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett involved, telling other extremely wealthy people to donate their fortunes. And in a sense, one could say tax me now is like the continental European version of that. Use my wealth for something beneficial, for something which accrue to the common good. So, and we have been talking today about philanthropy, and I will be curious to know what you think about this other way, so to say, the American way. And I have another question, which is not politically important, and maybe you don't want to answer it, but I was thinking when there is a transfer of wealth, there is also an act of acceptance. You have to say you want the transfer of wealth. So I would like to know, but as I said, maybe you don't want to answer, why did you accept the wealth you have been afterwards trying to get, if I may use the expression, to get rid of?
Okay, so the 99% should organize and the 1% won't help. First of all, the 99% already do organize. Like, I'm not the one telling you to start it. This has already been ongoing, and there's a lot of stuff that is happening, a lot of work is being done, and a lot of things have already been won. Some face more counteraction now, but I do want to honor all the efforts of people who are already like fully involved in social movements and in organizing. And you talked about this power of the capitalist promise of getting rich, blah, 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 and the stock market for individual insurance of care. And what the counter message is do I rephrase basically okay, good, just to make sure that I answer what you asked and not what I thought you asked. And there is a clip, I found it on Instagram, might be on YouTube too, where Trevor Noah, you might know him, he's one of these people that has like a late night kind of show, I think. I don't know, I never watched it live or anything, so I don't know anything about the format, where he dismantles a lot of bullshit, and apparently is very entertaining as far as I'm concerned. And he debunks something that the capitalist promise also brings to the table, which is they strip you of community and then they sell it back to you. Because what most organizing that I know that is also successful, even if it takes a long time and a lot of debate and a lot of work, is a sense of community. And community is an answer or like a counter-narrative, if you will, or can provide a counter-narrative to the hyper-individualistic system that the capitalist system needs. It needs everybody to be so individualized that everybody is so busy fixing their own lives that they can't connect properly in order to build communities where the interaction can help. You might know this saying, it takes a village to raise a child. That doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from actual experience of pre-capitalist societies. And I think the counter-narrative to you can become rich, which most people don't do in order to become powerful. Most people want to be rich because they want to be secure. They want to be comfortable. They just want to be at ease. They want to, for once, not have to consider their bank account in the back of their head all of the fucking time in order to figure out, can I own, like, this new chair I need or not? Or can I buy coffee or not? Can I heat and eat and pay rent this flipping month? Or do I have to ditch one of these? Preferably not rent. Like, most people just want security. And this constant anxiety and stress, I don't think that there is an agenda to put it on people like, let's make them be stressed and then they can't rise. But I think it's an effect of capitalism and of hyper-individualization that can only be countered by creating community, creating communal support systems. Also, legally you can do that by creating different forms of ownership that are not centered on an individual, but can be cooperatives, or I don't know all of the names of the different kinds of ownership models that you have, but there is legal frameworks that also allow for this kind of stuff where you share ownership in a way, which also means that you have a shared kind of responsibility. We do see that there is different approaches rising even into the capitalist sphere. Teams work better than individuals because you have a multi-perspective approach that is just usually more wholesome and more detailed and more precise most of the time. Like, you can also have a rubbish team situation because nobody is matched well, and like, I'm not going to say that it's like the non plus ultra, but I think community is really something that has to be built. It's not something that you just get. That's relationship work. It takes ages because it needs trust building. It needs figuring out what the shared values are, and all of this is a lot of work. and our societies are shaped in a way that make this very, very difficult work. But it's possible to do that. And I would advocate on the more societal level in terms of, for instance, the rent situation or the care situation where you have to invest in the stock market in order to be able to like secure your like life insurance so that you won't die forgotten and rot in a corner of a moldy flat. Structurally, you can go against this by having a very well-financed public service system where care is a good that nobody needs to pay for because it's paid for by the government because they tax wealth to pay for it. Like, there is ways of making sure that we don't have to individualize all of that. We can actually publicly pay for that. It is possible. It's the same, like, not the same exactly, but just bear with me for the simplification here. It's the same money, whether you put it on individuals to put on the stock market or whether you take it out of the wealthy and you put it in public hands, doesn't matter. Like, it's a choice of how you want to structure the system. And I think I would advocate for public ownership. That doesn't have to be state ownership. There's various ways of having public ownership also at smaller levels be done, city levels, communal levels. And I would advocate for community. Try to build that, try to reach out to organizations that work on community building. That's an actual field of activism. And it's very, very successful. And when it's done well, it can create a resilience for a group that otherwise would really struggle under the current system. So this is what I would go to in terms of counter-narrative. I would definitely encourage you. Maybe Hope in the Dark by Rebecca Solnit to begin with as a book, just to like get the spirit up, and then you will find a lovely, like there's lovely books to read that can point you in this direction. Maybe people here know some. I saw some people bobbing their heads, so maybe you can afterwards chat about this. And then this Carnegie thing with, first of all, Tax Me Now is not the European version of the Giving Pledge. I have to, I reject that completely. Because Tax Me Now we understand as a group that we need to be taxed, we need a structure that is not relying on the goodwill of rich people. We want a democratic process, and we want people in the democratic process to decide what we should do in terms of wealth taxation. The Giving Pledge is a scam. But seriously, I am so strongly opposed, because essentially what happens is you have these people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and who have you, they decide that they will redistribute their wealth, but it's not true. They put it in a foundation, and who owns the foundation? Who is on the board? They are. What does a foundation do classically? You have different kinds of foundations, but the normal structure, normal because it's the mostly used, is you put all of your stock on the financial market, essentially investing in the very companies that are destroying this planet in order to take a little bit of the revenue to sprinkle it on the crises that you fired and fueled through your stock investments. That's the Giving Pledge for you. They buy Coca-Cola shares to exploit workers in African countries, and then they sprinkle a little bit of development money because they're so good at heart, aren't they? But they get to decide what's good and what's not good. Who are they? Are they our kings? I don't think so. They should not be able to act accordingly. And if you mean it, you do what I call the sunsetting approach, which is a spend-down foundation, where you can still invest, yes, but first of all, do emission alignment. Please invest in such a way, if you must, invest in such a way that you do as little harm as possible and that you mission align all of your investment decisions with what you actually want to do, which almost no foundation does. And also because none of the foundations have to be really transparent about anything, we hardly know the harm that they cause, structurally speaking. And then you spend it down, and you create a spend-down plan until year X. Take Fahad Ibrahimi. Fahad Ibrahimi, multimillionaire in the US, he created a spend-down plan with the, what's the name? Oh, damn it. I forgot the name of his foundation, but Fahad Ibrahimi starts with an E, not with an I, even though I say Ibrahimi. So Fahad Ibrahimi, and he did a spend-down plan until 2023, and he spent down his wealth completely. He's one of the few people where I'm like, I'm looking up to you. And he's incredibly nice on top of things. And so he distributed all of this wealth into especially climate action, climate justice causes, but to get rid of it completely. Not because he wanted to get rid of it, but because he understood that if you like funnel wealth and money essentially into other kinds of like ownership or work or projects, which is work, it doesn't disappear. It becomes something different, but it doesn't disappear. And that's what people think when you spend money, it's disappearing. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear in the system either. It just transforms into something. It can transform into services and into goods. You might consume them, but it also a lot of the time transforms into labor, and labor always leads to something, most of the time to more labor, but eventually also to results, to actual change. And so the giving pledge is a scam unless they've actually completely spent down. It's not a giving pledge. It's a we restructure the ownership patterns pledge. But we do the same investments we did to accumulate wealth. Bill Gates tripled his wealth since the giving pledge. Tripled. He doesn't know what he's doing. I'm sorry. This man is utterly incompetent to do the kind of decision making that he does. And it's because he's so privileged that he's so incompetent. And I don't care that he has supported efforts to eradicate polio, because you can also do that publicly by just giving the governments back the monies that they need to do that. You can give the people back the decision-making power to get rid of it without having a billionaire come in and save the day. And he could have structured it differently. He could have made it not about himself. Like, so it makes me angry, and I know it's not you, like it's not your fault, but it gets me going. And so I think this American philanthropic way, I think the only kind of philanthropy that I can respect is abolitionist philanthropy. Philanthropy that puts itself out of business. Because you only need philanthropy when you have crises, when you have people who need support. And what other ends could you try to seek than to make sure that nobody needs you anymore? Because everybody's doing so well that they are independent of you. Philanthropy is dependence. There is a German quote, like it's not a German quote, I think, but it's from Pestalozzi. And I know it in German, and then I will translate it. But I will say it in German first, so that those who speak German in this room can correct my translation. It goes, Mildtätigkeit ist das Ersäufen des Rechts im Mistloch der Gnade. So charity is drowning rights or right equity in the sewage of mercy. That's what it is. I don't want to be at the mercy of anybody other than a transparent, participatory, inclusive, democratic system where I can engage with it and stand up to it alongside others. Then fair enough. Then they can create rules and I have to abide by them. And if I don't like them, I'm organizing against them. But I don't want to be at the mercy of anybody. I don't care about goodwill, because they just need to fall on their heads, like I said earlier about myself, and think all of a sudden, anti-vaxxers are really the heroes of our time. We should fund the bejesus out of them. They could choose that, and they could do that and make it happen. Look at the abortion ban in the US. That's also the result of philanthropy. But we don't call it philanthropy because we don't like it. But it's philanthropy at its core, in its essence, and how it works. It's philanthropy, but it's right-wing philanthropy. They think they're doing good. I bet you everybody think that they're doing the best for this world. But I think they should not be the ones to judge that. Everybody gets to judge that. I judge Bill Gates hard. I bet he does too. Like, I don't care. I think I'm right. I guess he does too. I need you to support me there. But yeah, anyway, so last question you said is, why did I accept the inheritance when I wanted to get rid of it? First of all, redistribution is not the same as getting rid of it. If I had renounced it, then I would have got rid of it. But also not, because what I said earlier, I think what I think is so important is to accept your role and to own it. Because personally, I think if you don't own the role you have, you can't really properly analyze the political structure around it and work with it. So the same goes for being white. I can't reject being white. I'm white. I'm super white. I like also so many cliche books of white people, and I can tick almost all of them. It's ridiculous. watch me dance, like it's fun. But I can't just decide not to be. And I can't decide not to be rich. It's impossible. Even when I have redistributed close to 100% of my inheritance, I will still be rich because I will most likely inherit at least once again. At least. And then what? And I can just call home and I'm like, I kind of like screwed up with my redistribution and my new independent freelance working project, and like I'm indebted by a couple of 100,000 now. Can I please get this money? And I will get it. Like I'm rich by association at worst. Like I'm not, it's impossible, I can't. And so I wanted to accept it and I wanted to use it. And then I was like, when I do this, I want to do it publicly because I want people to be able to use it as an example, not because I want them to be like, this is the example, this is how it should be done, but because I wanted people to be like, this is an example and this is good about it and this isn't. And that's what we can learn from it. And that's how we can now use that maybe as a counterexample to classical philanthropy and be like, yeah, but she gave power away, why didn't you? And they can be like, but she's still in the media, that's power, isn't it? And it's like, point taken. She's still on stage, why? Why do you still listen to me? You don't need me. But yeah, sorry.
I think those were wonderful closing words. We are at the end, so thank you so much, Marlene, for being with us, for talking to us. And I think we are at the end of the... first, a big applause for Marlene.